Indie answers question 2. What are some traps for aspiring writers? So to get into this one, I've done absolutely no prep work for this, by the way. This is probably going to be my most ranty episode of this. Uh, I'd say one of the biggest traps that aspiring writers always fall into is believing that the first project that they write is going to be of a publishable standard. Now, when I say a publishable standard, I don't just mean able to be traditionally published with a big major, one of the big five, or anything like that. I I more mean thinking that your first attempt at a book has any standing to be read by anyone other than you. Now that might seem a bit harsh, but let me just explain. So your first book, when you first start writing, I mean it really depends on some backgrounds, obviously. Like there are some exceptions to this. Like if it's your first book, but you've written before and you have like a creative writing degree or something, that's a bit different. There's an exception for that. But if you've literally never done creative writing since like year 11, since you were like 16, and you're picking it up now when you're in like say your 40s, 50s, as a lot of writers do, and you're writing this with the expectation that because you have so much experience in life that you'll be able to write something good. Uh, yeah, you might be able to write an interesting story, but is it actually going to be well written? Because writing, like anything, is a skill. It's like painting. You don't just pick up a paintbrush one day after not touching it for 10 years and just turn into Mozart or something. That's not how it works. But anyway, that's the main trap I would say that aspiring writers have is thinking that the first thing they write is gonna be good and is gonna make them like a profit or anything. Like for story time, I actually tried to get my first thing I ever wrote when I was 14, 15. Started writing when I was 14, I think finished it when I was 15, which was a sci-fi. Because what else would a teenage boy write? What else would a teenage boy who writes write besides sci-fi or fantasy? Let's be honest. And yeah, when I finished writing out the story, I didn't even write a second draft or anything like that. I thought, yeah, this will be good enough to make money and get me a book deal or whatever. So I reached out to I like applied for the self-publishing company, I think, but I didn't realize you had to pay to self-publish with them because they're one of those like scam sites. It's like we help you get self-published. Like yes, those actually exist. I think they still do, but it's just a stupid system. And they kept trying to call me and like get me to pay. I don't know if they realized I was a 14-year-old boy. I think because I mean they called me during like school and shit. It was really annoying. And they kept emailing me for years afterwards. They only stopped when I was maybe 4 years ago, and I was like 19. They stopped, so they were like emailing me constantly for. They stopped calling me because they didn't have my new number, but they kept emailing me for about 5-ish years. And then when I said finally responded to them and said no, I'm not interested in going with you. Please leave me alone. They said, oh, you want to just let it get dusty? It's like I wrote that when I was 14. Calm down. It's not like it's not Lord of the Rings or anything. It's a really bad book that I wrote without any prior writing experience and absolutely like no prior writing experience besides school and being kind of good at English. Like that was it. Anyway, that's the main trap, I think. Another trap I think aspiring writers try to do, which is kind of linked to this one, is immediately like promoting that they're a writer when they're only just starting out. Because I mean, there's nothing necessarily wrong with immediately promoting that you're a writer or you're going to be a writer or you're writing a project or something. But if you've literally just started it and you just want to talk about it like on Twitter or something, that's probably fine. That's absolutely fine. What I mean is promoting immediately for like your first project or something, which is linked to the first point. Because again, what if you read it, realize it's not publishable, and then have to tell that all these people that might be excited about your book, depending on how good you are at social media, if you're better than me anyway, that you're not actually going to be releasing it because it's not that great. And yeah, I just think this would just create a lot of problems for you really down the line, especially if you wanted to change your profile into something else and move away from that. People might still be following you for that and might still be doing what people do to George R. R. Martin, like when's the next book? When's the book? And they wouldn't leave you alone, and nobody really wants that. Okay, so another trap, I think that honestly, this is kind of one of those eye opener sort of things that when it happens to you, but I think if you, even if you're self publishing, if you're doing anything, I think getting proofreaders where you can is a good idea. But I think a lot of first time authors don't want beta readers because they're like, well, what if they think it's bad? So that's kind of the whole point. If they think it's bad, then that's clearly a sign, especially if you're getting people to read who are in your current target demographic. Like say you're writing YA and you ask like, I don't know, your niece or nephew or something, or your little brother, little sister, or siblings or friends same age as you, if you are currently a teenager, to read it for you, and they read it and they hate it, then that says quite a lot. Because not necessarily that they hate it because of the story beats. That's up to opinion. That's got nothing to do with it. That you don't really have to listen to that, but more that they just think this isn't written very well. This isn't very engaging. I got bored. Uh, Stuff like that. And yeah, I think that's a pretty big trap. If you want to be a writer, you're gonna have to try and develop thick-ish skin. Like you're gonna have to be able to deal with the fact that you might get some negative reviews at some point. Not saying you necessarily will get all that many, but you're probably going to get at least one star or 0 star review, and you just have to deal with it. That's life. Not everyone likes what you write. Uh, Another trap is. Hold on, I'm thinking. Falling for the trap of write what you know. Oh boy. I did an episode of Indie Opinions on this. I think it was the season 1 finale. But if you just write what you know, and I don't think this is necessarily, and you don't like, because you don't want to do any research on any specific project, I think your book, depending on your life, obviously, like John Grisham's been writing what he knows, he's been doing great because, he's a lawyer. All of his stuff are like legal thrillers and legal crime thrillers. And they're really popular because everyone loves them, because everyone loves like courtroom drama and shit. And also like the conspiracy aspect of it. But if you're like me and you don't think you're all that interesting, don't just write what you know, because I basically never go outside, so I would never write anything good. Alright, I need a fifth one. Yeah, another one, I think. Another trap is not being prepared at all for any kind of rejection. No, I mean from publishers specifically. Like, it doesn't matter if it's your first book or your fifth, you're going to get rejections. Especially, I mean, this doesn't necessarily correlate with indie, but this is just something I think that, especially if you're trying to write something really, really, really polarizing, and you want people to be shocked by it, and you want people to make people think, which is, I think the whole point of being a writer. If you just write something that everybody loves, and you don't ask, well, everybody can love it, but it has to make them think something. I just write something that's sort of mindless. Uh, but if you're writing something polarizing, like I think you probably should do, or something that makes people think, some people this goes for publishers and like readers, beta readers and stuff, aren't necessarily going to get it. And that's fine. Don't take it too personally. Don't think that just because they don't want to either take on your book or they don't want to read your book that it's necessarily bad. You just have to take what they say and sort of think about it a little bit more. Like if they say, I didn't, I think you should, like, there's a really good quote, I can't remember who does it, who says it, but it's basically like if they said, I didn't like this, or I thought that, then you listen to them. But if they say, I think you should, then it's just kind of their opinion and you don't really need to listen to them because they might be, just saying something that's their opinion and isn't actually rooted in fact and isn't actually all that helpful to you. Like if someone says, "Oh, it's too gory," or "Oh, I think it should be less gory," when that's the entire point, then you don't have to listen to that. You don't have to listen to that opinion. But if they say like, "I think the gore could have been described better," then maybe that's a thing to consider. But yeah, those are just some of my thoughts. Sorry for how not put together I've been in this episode. I honestly barely even prepared for this one. Uh, and yeah, join me next Sunday for the next episode. And as always, right on.